Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Fine Tuned Show. Today, with me, I have Nate Busa, who has 20 plus years of experience in building data platforms and AI systems at scale. Currently, he is head of AI automation at Neom Project. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Thank you, Gautam. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're most welcome. So, we'll just get right into it. And I want to start with asking you something like many people might be asking you these days. So, you have been building large scale data platforms and AI systems for quite some time and across industries, sectors, and large projects. My question to you is what do you think leaders underestimate when they are thinking about taking AI into production at this kind of scale?
Yes. So you see, what's happening now is quite peculiar because of the adoption of AI has been so fast. It also has created a certain divide between engineering and strategy and at the top. So what you normally see is that there is a large amount of experimentation which is happening at engineering level. Most of the engineers and the practitioners, they understand what it means to use AI. They have a variety of tools. Most of the time, also, they combine personal experiments with experiments and projects at work. But from the top, if you look at the leadership team, they are actually trying to optimize and solve different problems, which are not necessarily AI problems. They are enterprise problems. So a CEO might want to have faster decision making. A CFO is interested in better procurement, better cost optimization. CEO in operation is looking at how to optimize processes, increasing speed in the processes. And none of them is looking at AI in terms of experiments or in terms of tokens. So they're more related into the KPI and the objectives of the enterprise and the company. So, of course, this creates a sort of a divide in the organization. And one of the things that I'm always being asked, and one of the main focus of my analysis about this particular problem is how do you translate the AI strategy at that level, so leadership board level, and how do you bring it down to something that is implementable and manageable in the organization, right? So this is a very hot topic right now. I think that the problem to solve. So it's not so much, I would say, a tool problem, but it's more an operation and infrastructure problem. So how to reframe the AI within the, let's say, the objective of a CEO, CFO, and CO in the organization. So
Okay,
what I've seen that works today is that you need to provide a sort of a operating platform where you do have traditional KPIs, but accelerated with AI operations. So the moment that you do that, you remove from the equation the usual debate between AI skeptics and AI enthusiasts. Because a KPI has this wonderful property that it gives you a real indication about whether what you're doing is going in the right direction with respect to the company objectives. So if AI then becomes actually a driving force in the organization, must actually move traditional KPI in the organization. So once this is done, a lot of the things which are let's say left to personal interpretation, they are replaced with objective measurements. So for instance, a CEO might be interested in reducing the churn rate or maybe reducing the total process time or certain processes, for instance, onboarding, offboarding, acquisition of certain resources, and so forth. So those processes are very well understood in the industry. We understand that there are several steps involved in the execution of those processes. Now, the question is not let's propose a chatbot. The question is how can we fundamentally embed AI in this set of processes to reduce the total, let's say, execution time of the entire process, or for instance to reduce the total cost of ownership for that particular process.
Okay. So I was just, like thinking about the similar stuff basically a few days ago. That if I understood this correctly, what you're saying is that instead of thinking as AI more like a new thing to adopt, we should be thinking about what are our goals and objectives and KPIs, and is AI actually going to help with some of them or not. So then we actually get real adoption through the vertical stack or through the top down approach of the leadership.
Indeed. So
Yeah.
if you look at that, it's more about a quiet adoption rather than an adoption driven by hype. It
Mm-hmm.
should be a quiet adoption. If the tool works in the context of a company or an enterprise framework, it means that it's literally improving the processes of that company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen it time and time again that the moment that you stop treating AI as an experiment and you opt for AI in production, the best places where AI is actually understood is operation, finance, and decision making. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the three poles that are actually most benefiting from AI in this form. How do you do that? Well, it requires some discipline because um, it requires the right amount of governance, understanding what is the nature of the data being operated, and also the nature of the process. Now, interestingly enough, most of the time, the IT organization is not necessarily involved in any of these three. So
Mm-hmm.
this creates also an extra point of friction because most of the benefit of the AI are actually external to the AI organization.
Right.
So the IT organization most of the time sees only let's say, the pipelines and engineering aspects,
Mm-hmm.
but so it's mostly cost oriented. So trying to optimize the cost, but the benefit they actually sit in other parts of the organization. So this actually is so important that you have this sort of, let's say, I wouldn't say a committee, but at least a sort of a sounding board where you put together, the consumer
Mm-hmm.
of AI in the organization together with the one that actually manage and support AI from a technical standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important that you create this sort of synergy. The best way of seeing it operating is by creating sort of SWAT teams. So if you have a sort of let's say, the Spotify model, right,
Mm-hmm.
where you have Scrum teams and you have tribes and groups of people which are organized by topic rather than by competence, then you would see that this model is extremely well suited to introduce AI because in the same unit, in the same Scrum team, you would have a business representative, you will have operation, you would have IT, you would have, let's say, support,
Mm-hmm.
and they all contribute to the result of that objective. So let's say that you want to do an acceleration in the, for instance, in a call center support cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Having to know what is the cost of the operation of the call center and knowing how much you can offboard, for instance, to the AI without actually having the organization losing any quality on
Mm-hmm.
the answers. That is all, these are all business, let's say, motivation. Because you cannot have an AI that says, let's say, that kind of discard questions, then it would be an incredibly, let's say, fast AI, but also an incredibly wrong one.
Yeah.
So you need to put together the business objectives to have still a very high quality of responses with very high feedback from the customer, and at the same time a reduction in costs. It must cost obviously less than before,
Mm-hmm.
and a reduction of, let's say, response times.
Makes
Put
sense.
it all together, that creates real value.
So, and I actually wanted to ask you a very quick follow up on that. Like you mentioned that the IT department in general thinks more in sense of the infrastructure, the pipelines, and setting things up. And then you have on the other side the business units who are thinking about KPIs and like how to move faster with their goals. Could this be the reason that this new head of AI or the department of AI thing is becoming more popular at enterprises, because this becomes like a glue between the two, that they understand the KPIs and then they understand the IT and they try to like bring these things together?
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly right, Gautam. You pointed out an important point. So it's in fact like in the past there was and there is still in many companies a CDO,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is not a CTO, is not a CIO, and is not a COO. So sits right in the middle, operating on that domain, which is data, and trying to bridge the gap between the quality of the data and the governance of the data, which is so much required for CFOs and COOs in
Mm-hmm.
the industry, and bridges that with the CIOs and the CTOs in the organization, which are responsible for maintaining and supporting tools and selecting the tools for the organization which are the most appropriate for the type of data and processes. The same is happening for AI.
Mm-hmm.
So you see now that, in fact, there are two kind of ways that it could be solved. So one is, in fact, to have a combined data and AI office. I've seen that in many scenarios, many companies. Either they prefer to have especially an AI office, which is slightly more, let's say, inclined towards automation, and a data office, which is more inclined towards governance and IP protection,
Mm-hmm.
and operating again as a glue both between, let's say, the other part of the organization and the IT domain. So one point that is always left on the side, and I think that is very, very important for companies that are serious about AI in production, is that you must have a certain stability and predictability for these systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the experimentation phase, it's fairly fine to have, let's say, a model that has a bit of a jagged response on some of the, let's say, the tasks that is provided.
Mm-hmm.
But when you move to production, you need to smooth out that jagged response. So if you have, for instance, an HR, you don't want the HR agent to be biased or to answer extremely well in certain scenario, but extremely erratic in other. You want some, let's say, sort of a baseline to be covered. This brings certain aspects which are completely new in the organization. So how do you properly manage the stability of the model?
Mm-hmm.
The stability of the agent? What sort of internal testing and internal maybe data sets or
Mm-hmm.
do you want to exercise on your agent? And are you doing that in a cost predictable way? You know that these days models they vary significantly
Yeah.
in terms of costs.
Right.
So some are cheaper, some are and more capable, some are let's say less capable, some are very capable but very expensive. So how do you combine that? Third, but not least, in the list of things that you need to take care in production is how much are you, let's say, how much tiers do you put in your AI infrastructure?
Mm-hmm.
You have, definitely you have local AI these days. Some organizations which are extremely blessed, they could have even AI on their laptops
Mm-hmm.
in certain cases. Seen that especially let's say MacBooks, they can run models on the laptop. That brings a whole set of new IT problems related to how to maintain these sort of things in the organization. That's tier one or tier zero. You might have it or you might not have it, depending on your choices. Tier one, let's call that tier zero. Tier one would be local AI, an AI which is embedded in the enterprise. Most
Mm-hmm.
of the time is on-prem, extremely well protected, well maintained, but ITCO, because you have to manage the models yourself. You need to, let's say, update the model,
Mm-hmm.
deprecate the old ones, etc. It's all in your hands. very powerful, very private. Most organizations that are serious about AI, they're also thinking in that direction. Then you have a tier two, sovereign AI. So an AI which is fully managed in the country or
Okay.
in the body of legal, let's say, domain that you want to operate.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, it could be country level, it could be European level, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have a cloud AI.
Okay.
Now, these four levels are also very important because they give you a sense about that there are choices to be made when
Mm-hmm.
you want to run in operation, in production, in AI, with AI elements in it. And it also links back to what we just discussed, so model stability and model predictability,
Mm-hmm.
because each of these systems has a different trade-off about the cost of the operation of the AI system and the stability and the predictability, as well as of the data sovereignty. So where is the data located? So lots of choices to be made there. But once you're aware of the framework, then things are much, much clearer. So especially for the directors and the leadership team out there that are trying to make some, let's say, high-level decision, I think this already creates a sort of an interesting framework about how you want to think about AI for your own organization and what sort of buttons and levers you have in order to adjust it to your particular objectives.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I think the this like the tier level stack that you described just now, I think that will resonate with a lot of our audience. So thank you. And now let's come to a little bit more interesting part of enterprise AI, which generally does not have a lot of documentation online, because I was also looking at it and I could not find much there. So I'll just request your insights on that. Let's talk about AI governance a little bit. Like in enterprise scenarios, where does that come into the picture, and how does that look like? Because I am coming from the Web3 world. I know about blockchain governance and social stuff. I'm pretty sure this is very different from that. So I would love your insights.
Yeah, so governance for AI is still very much, let's say, a topic under development.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that there are two main ways of looking at governance. So one is a more traditional but very well understood and very valuable set of concepts set up in the broader, let's say, CISO governance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So every time that you're dealing with this sort of systems, in fact, you're managing data and you're managing the in fact is data and compute. CISO is a way where things are well understood in terms of let's say what are the principles that you want to apply in terms of access to this information and for instance what sort of data protection you want to apply, locality, but also things that are very important for any production system that are normally not done in experimentation, but they are a must in production. I'm talking about monitoring. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about logging. AI also includes some new challenges, which are,
Okay.
for instance, guidelines and guardrails. So every time that you act on an AI system, you have the opportunity to control the AI system at 3 points. One is in flight before the AI system.
Mm-hmm.
So you want, for instance, to understand, is there any form of, let's say, pre-flight analysis I want to do on the data being transmitted? And there's numerous ways there. Actually, this podcast will not give credit to the variety of techniques there, because you can do NLP analysis, you can do rule-based analysis on in-flight.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-flight, before reaching the AI system. Then within the AI system, these days, there is a lot of conversation being held around the value of the harness.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the harness? So the harness is all that, let's say, infrastructure of rules, processing, software that is, let's say, almost like covering the AI model
Mm-hmm.
and sort of augmenting it with tool use integrations, man in the loop, automatic looping on multiple AI prompting, etc.
Hmm.
Sorry to be a bit more technical here,
Right.
but the harness is very important these days because there is a new, let's say prompt engineering 2.0, which is emerging, which is called harness engineering. Because there is so much, let's say, coding, APIs, integration all around the model, is becoming a very sophisticated machinery.
Hmm.
That's the second place where you can actually do a very good, let's say, a job in governing the model,
Hmm.
exactly in the harness. The third one is, let's say, post flight.
Okay.
So you receive your message back from an AI system, you still have an opportunity to control, check, validate what the answer is, whether the answer is appropriate to the guidelines and principles of the organization or country level or even let's say sovereign level sort of let's say constraints. Now all of this a sort of a scope which in my opinion is an excellent let's say overlap between engineering and CISO. So
Right.
you would have there two different ways of looking at it. One would be CISO, the CISO way, and the other would be CIO, CTO way.
Hmm.
And I think you need both in order
Right.
to have the best benefit from your AI system. That said, I do not believe that this is already carved in stone.
Hmm.
On the contrary, we are seeing that the principles and approach, both let's say programmatic as well as rule based, around AI governance are very much evolving and
Hmm.
maturing. I hope that my answer gives you a bit of a let's say
100%.
more of a landscape view
Yes.
about what's happening today.
Yes, 100%. And this is very well put together. So thank you for that. It's like, because there is so less being like said about it, but every architecture diagram that I see has a box about governance, but there is not much written about it. So always curious to understand, like, uh, at least the broader area around it. So thank you for putting it together. Let's move on to the next question. Like, basically, you lead multiple teams across AI and automation. And when you are building a team to deliver enterprise AI at scale, what do you look in people? Like, how do you structure teams to move fast in this area? Is there something different that you would do to build an enterprise AI team rather than building, like the previous teams that you have done?
Yes. Look, first of all, I've seen this problem before in the past. You might remember about 10 years ago, the data scientist was the hottest job in the industry, as it was, I think, quoted somewhere to be the hottest job
Mhm.
10 years ago. And now we are talking about AI, and again, we have the same struggle.
Mhm.
So, what is the best AI team, and what are the skills, and but also the personality and the profile of individual participating in an AI transformation. Like it was before, some things are you can make a sort of a bit of a bridge between
Mhm.
what was happening before and what's happening now. So first of all, those are people that are comfortable with ambiguity, with vagueness, with the capacity to operate at the frontier of what's possible today, and that they are curious and they are comfortable with new technology and new sort of ways of working.
Mhm.
But this is not enough. As an engineer and lead, as a CTO, I also need to add some sort of structure in the team.
Right.
So normally the way I look at it is I divide it in four parts. So first of all, you need to have somebody who is good at integration and SRE
Mhm.
and DevOps. So that hasn't changed. The technology is different, of course, but development, deployment, SRE, and integration, they're extremely important and they must be done right.
Right.
So that's one group of people that you must have in the team. Another group of people is the people who are basically a sort of a software developer 2.0.
Mhm.
And why I say 2.0 is because there is a lot of, let's say, being said these days about software not being a job anymore. I disagree. It is still a job. There is tasks that can be automated and accelerated with AI, but
Mhm.
the job still exists. In fact, it exists even more than before because I've seen good developers developing at 10 to 100x with the help of AI, but with the knowledge and the accumulated know-how that they built over the years in their software development practice, they're
Right.
actually able to understand how to steer the let's say code generation in ways that they improve over time and not just getting a template out from an AI and calling it a day. So there is
Mhm.
a lot of work to be done in engineering. Only that now the engineering is extended to, let's say, traditional computer aided coding, which is not vibe coding. It's more
Right.
like an extension of the individual skills towards automated coding
Mhm.
and prompt engineering, harness engineering, and all these things where there is more and more a certain amount of coding in English
Right.
together with coding in whatever language it is. Normally, it's TypeScript for
Mhm.
front-end developer and Python for back-end developer. So that prompt engineering or that engineering around the harness, it can happen in two ways. It can
Mhm.
happen during the implementation time. So the communicates with the AI for writing a better software.
Right.
Or it can happen at runtime. So the developer, together with the product part of the team and with the, let's say, with the architects and the product owners, they define some policies written in English, which
Right.
then are executed in runtime for the benefit of this AI system. This is another topic where we could talk for hours because
Mhm.
when is the best to have the AI actually implementing traditional software at development time, and when is best to have the AI actually executing AI processing and AI thinking at runtime.
Right.
So where do you put the smartness, so the
Right.
thinking?
Yeah.
At runtime or at the development time, at dev time? The last group that I want to talk about is security, FinOps, and product owners. People that have a sensibility about how to integrate that particular, let's say, AI project in the organization.
Right.
So all in all, I would say 10 to 15 people. If you really want to go to the bone of it, you could go to 6 people.
Mhm.
6 people these days, I do not recommend
Mhm.
because I would not have, let's say, at this point in time, the technology is so new. You want to have a sparring partner for each of
Right.
these, for this of these profiles. So
Right.
it's better to have like two of each, so that they can learn from each other, discuss ideas, rather than having, let's say, for each of these profile, a single person working solo in the
Mhm.
team. So I would say 6 at the very minimum. 12 could be a good, let's say, sizable team where people could also discuss and spar on particular aspects.
Perfect. So just to sum it up, like one, you mentioned the SRE and the infrastructure integration side of things. Then you have the software engineer 2.0 who works with AI. You mentioned CISO or the information security and that part. And what was the fourth? I think I missed that
So the
one.
last one is some form of product owner and
Mhm.
architect
Okay.
that
Okay.
is keeping the thread of the conversation with the broader team, the broader structure of the organization, understand which KPIs needs to be moved, going back to our first question,
Okay.
and how to interact with the rest of the organization.
Perfect. Awesome. And one final question before we wrap this up. And it's more like, something that through your breadth of experience, we want to have some benefit for the listeners in some sense of like what should they do. So my question is, like, your career has spawned the big data era, the machine learning era, and now the generative AI era. So, and each came with enormous hype and promises. So every time there is something new happening, there is so much hype. You also mentioned like 10 years ago, data scientists. So what patterns have you seen that are being repeated, and what should leaders do differently this time?
So there are various reasons why, let's say, leaders and a leadership team would want to incorporate new technology
Mhm,
in the organization. It's good to have a culture of experimentation,
mhm,
especially in organizations which are large and they tend to have, let's say, transformation cycles. AI is not different in that respect. You must embrace it. You must enter the journey of
mhm,
transformation. What you want as an organization is to maintain a certain level of fluidity,
mhm,
because that is what helps you creating opportunities in the organization. So now to the more, let's say, debated and controversial part. Are these opportunities materializing or not? And in the past, we've seen that we had very high expectation for some form of technology, and some that did materialize. So, for
mhm,
instance, the advent of machine learning models
mhm.
was highly appreciated in a number of industries. We understand that now, for instance, manufacturing, vision, supply chain have all benefited from machine learning models, but
Right.
also other part of enterprise, they have got huge benefit from that.
Mhm,
Now the AI has again the same challenge to make sure that there is a clear boost and improvement in the performance of a company.
mhm,
Again, time will tell, but I would say that the companies that they are making it objective, KPI driven, let's say, innovation are
mhm.
those ones that are better set to collect the benefit
Right.
from the AI transformation. Those ones that are more experimenting, they would see maybe some results. There have been studies already that the experimental approach translates most of the time in, let's say, 80% plus of projects not being converted into production. There
Right.
are McKinsey studies and in that direction, and of many other consulting companies that are clear that experimentation has a certain boundary.
Right.
Production is mostly KPI driven. So I think that those results are bound to happen.
Mhm.
Interesting fact, I'm not sure if you're aware, both OpenAI and Anthropic are setting up sort of daughter companies which are meant to operate as vertical domain operators
Yeah.
in many domains. Legal is one of them, HR, supply chain,
Finance. Yeah.
etc. So clearly they have seen something there,
Right.
and now I think it's the right time to have that uh, taken as a very good signal
Mhm.
that there are improvements to be made in
Right.
the enterprise. So, but again, let's walk from principles, so
Mhm.
from KPIs and companies' objective rather than the other way around, starting from the AI and figure out what could be done in the enterprise. That would be
Awesome.
my final, let's say, take on for this podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nate. And this is super insightful, especially the part where like gave us insights on so many things related to the tiers, the governance side of things, how to set up the team. Like there is so much in there. And I'm pretty sure everybody who listens to this is going to benefit. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights. Anything that you want our listeners to check out in terms of your work, or like any call to action?
Uh, just be curious and be focused. I think
Awesome.
these are the two things. At a very high level, a leadership, director level, focus and curiosity. I think they can lead to very good result at this
Awesome.
point.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.